the comptroller is in the house, and he's going to talk to us today about cutting some red tape. But before he does, let's bring you up to speed on some of the hurdles faced by New Yorkers who run small businesses. Small business, big bureaucracy. So first, the findings. Over 95% of all businesses in the city have fewer than 50 employees. As a matter of fact, between 2000 and 2013, companies with fewer than 5 employees gained about 31,000 plus jobs, contributing to a number that we saw at the end of 2014 that said small businesses employed about 1 million New Yorkers. Moving on here, we're going to talk about who exactly was surveyed for the comptroller's report. Well, 383 people attended commission hearings in person, 77 people testified at those commissions, and 282 folks responded to the commission hearing. And about 48% of the respondents said that they didn't feel treated fairly by city inspectors. Going a little deeper into that number, the same 48% stated that inspectors didn't adequately provide them with information about how to cure violations. Finally, 58% of those people stated that officials didn't adequately communicate requirements for inspections that could have saved them some time and trouble and violations, frankly. And our final slide here, city approvals. Now, people are ready to get their business started, but the final hurdle is getting some sign-off from the city. And when we're looking at those timetables, less than a month waiting was about 21%. 1 to 3 months was the usual, with about 27%. Going down to the shameful end, some people waited, about 4% of them, over 2 years for that last final hurdle before they could get their businesses started, while those in that sweet spot of 6 to 12 months were about 16%. So that's going to just give you a little snapshot at the small businesses going up against big bureaucracy. And now, the A block.
Rule by desks or offices. That's the literal meaning of bureaucracy. Notice it contains no mention of people. Maybe that's why the word has come to be synonymous with inefficiency and waste, and why the City Comptroller's office has issued a new report titled Red Tape Commission, 60 Ways to Cut Red Tape and Help Small Businesses Grow. Right now, we want to welcome back New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. Welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here at BRIC. I'm very excited.
Thank you. We love it. Anytime you can come by. So, Comptroller Stringer, tell us, for those of us who haven't read about the report, can you give us a brief overview of the process of forming the Red Tape Commission and its findings?
So we put together a group of folks who have expertise in business, perhaps owned a business or work in this field. And I said to them, let's go talk to small business owners about the bureaucracy and what it means. What are the challenges to open up a small business in New York? And it's been an amazing journey because we've traveled the boroughs, we've talked to people all over the city, and we were able to issue this report which made 60 important recommendations to the city about how to make it easier for businesses. And as you explained in the opening, look, small businesses employ 1 million people. Here in Brooklyn, there are 52,000 small businesses operating in Brooklyn that employ 222,000 people. So small business is big business when you think about the employment and the entry-level jobs our young people have from so many of these businesses. So we've got to get this right. And it has been a journey, but I think these recommendations make it well worth it. The bottom line is there is so much red tape in our city agencies. You could have 10 ticker tape parades. And I'm just saying that we have to now figure out a way to make it easier.
So looking at those small businesses, particularly those that employ less than 5 people, which is a lot of businesses. Some of them are one-man bands and they have employers, and it's almost a full-time job just to deal with this red tape. So much so that people hire people known as Expeditors.
So in order for a small business to talk to a city agency, they hire the middleman. So when you have to hire someone to do your talking at these small business, at these agencies, you're already in trouble.
Sounding the alarm.
And when we surveyed the small businesses, they said that 40% of those expeditors don't do anything. So that was, so it's not even like you're putting your money where it's worthwhile. Here's another thing. At the Department of Health, if a small business or restaurant needs questions answered from the Department of Health, if they want to know what to do, the Department of Health charges them $400 for a consultation fee. Come on.
How is that?
this is the way it is in the life of a small business. And, you know, so many of our small businesses are started because people, new immigrants, people who just came to our country, or young entrepreneurs, they just had a dream. So they skimped and they saved. They didn't get a bank loan. They didn't get big money. So this is their one shot to make it. And all the politicians love to go to openings of these small businesses. I'm a former borough president. What do borough presidents do? We like to cut ribbons. And when the ribbon cutting is done, the agencies start coming in and really hurting these small businesses. So we have to make things better.
So there's a number out there that says that the average life of a small business is somewhere under 5 years. So we've seen that a lot of fines that the city's addressed, these small business people said we've been fined extensively, and we feel like we're a revenue source for the city. So while the fines have gone down a little bit, those businesses, that lifespan hasn't really gone up.
No, and look, let me say this. You know, I commend Mayor de Blasio for reducing the fines down 20%. I talked about that a week before we released our report. Right. So the city is committed to small business, and there's a lot of worthwhile programs. I want to make that clear. We wanted to hear not a top-down approach, but a bottom-up approach, talking to small business owners about what they need the city to do. So first and foremost, we've got to get this permit approval process under control. There are 6,000 rules pertaining to small businesses. There are 250 licenses or applications you need. That spans 15 different agencies. So you can't wait. You can't have unpredictability when you're opening up a business. Is my license going to come in 3 months, 6 months, or for that 4%, or in 2 years? I can't afford to pay the landlord that rent while I'm waiting for the city to do its part. So we need predictability in our licensing.
I know a few years ago, not before de Blasio, the Bloomberg administration put out an RFP for someone to fix typewriters at City Hall, and people were making fun because they're like, we want to get typewriters fixed in City Hall, but I guess that's endemic of a larger problem that a lot of these forms still have to be filled out or notarized or sent in duplicate and triplicate. When it's 2016, everything's online, but people still have to fill out forms.
Has anyone heard of the word technology?
Yeah.
And that is something that we have to bring to bear in our city agencies.
How much of this could be solved just by bringing things online?
A lot of it. This is about streamlining the bureaucracy. This is about, so imagine if Expeditors weren't needed, but we actually had small business advocates in the city agencies to take a small business through the whole process to get them where they have to be. And very often the profit margin is held up in this bureaucracy. So I think this report has been an important exercise because what came out of it were real recommendations about application fees, consulting fees, and really making businesses the centerpiece of our new economy in the city. You know, we talk a lot about the high-tech economy. You know, I'm a big believer in it. I think it's imperative for our kids to be part of that. But let's not throw away the mom and pops or the new stores that are popping up.
No,
People,
of course
this
not.
is what makes New York City.
Absolutely,
you know,
especially when so many of those mom and pops are from immigrant workers who come here with that dream and start those businesses. And speaking of, Comptroller Stringer, a lot of those people don't speak English, right? They'll come here and they don't really need to start up this business and get those initial phases going. But then they get stuck when they need to talk to somebody and they don't necessarily have a translator on hand available, right? Those were some startling facts that came out in the report as well, how many times someone is available to actually translate for somebody so you can even talk to somebody about the permit that you need. And that was a really small number.
And the first time a business owner who may not have an English proficiency speaks to a government agent is when the inspector comes to fine you or try to put you out of business and you can't communicate. So we need enhanced language services for sure. And you also need to time construction projects with small business development. You know, I was on Myrtle Avenue with a crew of folks, and you could just see the amount of repair, you know, pedestrian repairs, large development projects opening, and it seems that there's a whirlwind of activity, but nobody is worried about what that project or what that construction is going to do to the small business.
Absolutely.
And it was heartbreaking to talk to small business owners who basically said, I lost my business because of construction. They didn't do anything wrong.
Scaffolding in front of their
Look at
Scaffolding.
2nd Avenue, too, in Manhattan.
Well,
I mean,
as borough president, I was invited to the 4th grand opening of the 2nd Avenue subway, so I've been there. No, and by the way, the collateral damage of those small businesses.
those small businesses are all losing
so many
everything.
gone. So many are gone because of lack of planning. So I hope that this report gets us the attention. There's nothing more sad for a community when you see the small businesses leaving. Those are the businesses that you go to, whether it's for your morning coffee or
Absolutely.
the same shoe store or clothing store that your first kid went to, and now your second kid, and now your grandkid.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to lose those stores.
Well, here in Brooklyn, we have some 52,000 small businesses, and your this Red Tape Commission was up and down the scale, from street vendors and even solar installers and people helping to retrofit homes to businesses who are long established but still facing a lot of hurdles. I wondered if there was a sector that was particularly hard hit by all of this bureaucracy.
You know, it seems to me, and this is just anecdotal, that the smaller your business, the harder it is, because you just don't have the resources, perhaps, to hire an expediter, to keep the lawyer on payroll. And I'm just struck by how many young entrepreneurs are setting up shop in our city. And they keep going in all communities and all different languages. You really see why we have like 58 million tourists who want to come here, want to get off the plane or the train, go to Brooklyn, and just see the town. But we want to keep that diversity and that excitement going. And a lot of urban cities are really designed by the small business owner. And it's not just the big box stores, but if we just have Dwayne Reeds and Chase Manhattan Banks on every block, because we didn't pay attention, we didn't do everything we could to nurture the small business, then we're just going to become like one big, ATM machine.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
Or one big mall, you know?
We don't want
Have
that.
the street mall culture.
We are New Yorkers.
Absolutely.
You spoke about those other cities, and I took a little pride going through the report. I saw Chicago mentioned a few times with some innovative programs that they were trying. So of those 60 recommendations, like, we're moving towards some real solutions here that don't require a heavy lift. I wondered who's doing it right and what we can steal from other places to really keep New York working.
I've always said that the best form of flattery is when we steal an idea from another big city. I have no problem doing that, right?
No,
so you could look
no,
at what
shouldn't.
others are doing. Now, the goal is that when we steal their idea, we actually do it so much better that we send it back to them, right?
They don't even realize.
So
and then
Chicago
they
says,
take
oh,
it
it's
back.
coming back from New York to Chicago. Yeah, we're sending it right back. So I look at the glass half full, because, as I said, I think the city administration, the mayor's made this a priority. Right. We're helping by supplementing some of the research, because there's nothing like talking to hundreds of small business owners at hearings and doing the research, doing the work.
Right.
And so this commission was not just about my office. This was about people, everyday New Yorkers who asked questions, took the time to go to the hearings. Right. And that's how you get things done.
But you guys should also be commended, because it wasn't just come here because these people have enough difficulty trying to wade through red tape, devoting entire staffers to doing it all by themselves. So you reached out online, you talked to people, they called in, there were hearings, town halls that you've been doing all over the city.
It's been great. And this is part of our agenda to build the financial health of a community. Before this Red Tape Commission, we've talked a lot about women and minority-owned businesses, the fact that the city spends $14 billion a year procuring paper clips, paper, food vendors, and yet lawyers, accountancy firms, and yet at the end of the day, only 5% of that spend goes to women and minority-owned businesses. Yeah. So we're grading agencies and forcing them to take a look at their practices to get more investment through these MWBE firms, because we want them to be part of the community. Brooklyn's going to hire Brooklyn, right? Yeah. And Manhattan hires Manhattan. And so this network, we've got to make sure that everybody has a shot at resources, because that's who's going to hire the kids.
And paying them in a timely fashion. That's also in the report as well. Once you get the contract.
That is definitely true, and I have to work with the mayor and the mayor's office on that as well. So we're looking at ways that we can improve the work that we do, because we also are, we can't be antiquated, and we have to reform the city agency procedures, how we pay vendors, how we make it easier. Because it's tough out there. Look, it is tough. It's expensive. It's tough to own a small business, and I hope this will make a difference.
Before you get out of here,
Yes, sir.
we have a plethora of materials that
Do
come
have
out
one.
of your office. I read all these things. But we are going to be talking next week about this report. It's actually about the barriers to voting, and we're going into the primary season. So I'm going to ask the most unfair thing. Give me the 45-second summary of what New York City and New York State ultimately could be doing better to really get people out of our apathy into the voting box.
In 2014 statewide election, New York State turned out 48 out of 50 states, the most progressive state and city in the world, that our people are not voting. People like to blame individuals for not participating, but we've got a lot of barriers to the ballot box. We need to have same-day voter registration. We need to have early voting. We need to give people more voting options. Life is very complicated for folks who are raising children. Trying to get through the day, 15 hours to vote on big days is not enough. No. So we took all the good work that legislators at Albany, the bills that they've introduced, the issues that we've championed, we've put this report together, 16 reforms that we can do now to increase voting in New York City, increase voting in New York State. And listen, everyone says, well, we got Hillary and Bernie, and we got that crazy Trump, and of course people are going to be motivated. But we need to help people to make it easier to vote. Why can't we have same-day voter registration?
Why?
I'm inspired. Why can't we pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds so on their 18th birthday they are registered voters? Why can't we do that for our young people and then spend the rest of the time pushing them into the political civic debate of our time?
So what's the number one thing you would like to see tomorrow come out of that report? Of all the reforms, which one?
I'm not going to pick my favorite, but I will say, when I was a state legislator, I introduced the same-day voter registration bill. I think it was over 10 years ago, because it just made sense to me. Imagine just getting inspired and saying, "Okay, I'm in.
Okay,
I want to go change. I want to go. I got to go tomorrow." Why do we have these artificial barriers where you have to wait? You miss the moment, and I think this would be great.
Right, and knowing that it's going to count, right? Because you can go, you can fill out the absentee one, you can do all that, but
and politicians, myself included, there's a favorite term that people use. It's called the prime voter. So much of elections are about who's going to vote, right?
Right.
What happens if on any given day anyone can vote? Then how do you govern? You got to govern for everyone, not for the 10% who are the most likely. And I think we'd have a better
prime elected.
Exactly.
Well, the prime elected is here. Thank you, New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer, for coming back.
Great to be back.
We love it when you're here.
I love it here.
Thanks.
thank you.